evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the February 16th edition of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Colin Dowe, and I'll be serving as your host this evening. I begin this evening, as I begin every evening, by offering my thanks to you for joining us, because this program is all about you, and you're the ones that truly make it happen. So thank you very much, whether you're tuned in on GBN television, listening on GBN radio, or logged on to any of our social media platforms. Thank you, and we look forward to an exciting 90 minutes. This evening really is an evening of reflection as we go beyond the tragedy and we continue to mourn the loss of Alejandra Let Hippolyte. Last week we were faced with the devastating news of what is an inexplicable and senseless murder. And we yet again, as a nation, have to grapple with this reality. I start this week as I started last week by again extending condolences to the family, the friends, the relatives, the classmates of Alejandra. And as we facilitate this this evening's discussion, we have a panel of experts, as it were, and I will go from my immediate right. Jackie Sealey-Burke, who is a legal consultant. Jackie, welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Excellent. Dr. Debbie Neckles, who is a behavioral scientist and has been working since her return in Grenada very actively in the field of reform. Debbie, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Formerly, I'll be saying Inspector Andrea Noel, but now I can just say Andrea Noel. And Andrea Noel is a former head of the Special Victims Unit within the Royal Grenada Police Force. Andrea, welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you for having me.
And online we have Kerri and Marrast, who is a youth parliamentarian, and we certainly would like to get her views, her perspectives, and she's here to share with us. Kerri, likewise, welcome to Beyond the Headlines, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Excellent. Jackie, if I may start with you. In the wake of this killing, what is the relevance of gender-based violence, and can we say that sexual offenses against women and girls, or gender-based violence in general, is a problem in Grenada?
Yes, we can definitely say, Colin, that gender-based violence is alive in Grenada, and very unfortunately is claiming the lives and claiming the well-being of so many of our women and our girls. Sexual offenses in particular, I mean, we know that both sexual offenses and domestic violence are perhaps the two most relevant forms of gender-based violence for us within our national context. But sexual offenses, I mean, our region, Colin, has alarming rates of rape and other forms of sexual offenses, whether it be indecent assault, incest, sex with a minor. I can share with you a global crime survey that was done quite a while ago. Mm-hmm. But that survey, and this was global, found that the Caribbean as a region has higher rates of rape than the global average. So if you take all the countries across the world and look at their averages, almost every country in the Caribbean exceeds that global average. At that time when the survey was done, we had 3 of our countries being in the top 10. Grenada at that time was twice the global average. So the global average is about 15 out of 100,000. Mm-hmm. Grenada at the time that survey was done was about 30.6. And we weren't one of the 3 countries in the Caribbean that was in the top.
We were not?
But no, but we were well above the global average, twice. So we clearly have a serious problem with sexual offenses. And I mean, besides that global data, you can look at the assises list, which, as you know, is the cases that are going to go up to the High Court. And consistently, 40 to 60+% of those cases are sexual offenses. I mean, that's as graphic as it comes when you look at that list and you can see, you know, repeatedly rape, incest, indecent assault. I mean, and when you say 40 to 60% of all cases, that's offenses against the person, all of the other offenses, drug offenses, property offenses. So think of the whole, you know, range of offenses that we have in our criminal code, and then 40 to 60% of those cases are sexual offenses. That's very, very, very concerning. And then we have prevalence surveys that were done for Grenada. Not too long ago, we had a prevalence survey that was done, and it demonstrates in a very, very powerful way that gender-based violence is a beast that we're struggling to fight, with serious implications, resulting sometimes, as we can see, in death.
Debbie, if I can just bring you in here, and you're going to put on your professional hat here. Caribbean, well above world average. Grenada, twice time. Almost half, or averaging about half of the cases in their sizes, sexually related crimes. Why are we here? What is it about our cultural context that probably might be responsible for these high rates of gender-based violence and general sexual offenses in particular?
You know, I'm glad you used the word culture. And culture, for me, I think plays a huge role here. And I'm talking not cultures in terms of heritage, but culture in terms of the way we think, the way we, what we believe, right? So, for example, we have the saying, you know, which is a time, let go of my cock, tie your head. Right. You know, we hear that statement, and sometimes we chuckle, we smile, but if we were to dig deeper, like we were to pull apart that statement, what you're basically saying is that we are just letting our men and our boys do whatever it is that they want to do, but we keep our girls to our chest. Now, I would say... Or
at least we ought to keep our
girls to, right.
Because they're on their own.
Yes. Well, that's true too. Yeah. And what it is, we endeavor to raise our girls, right? But we don't raise our boys. We allow our boys and our men to just roam freely. And I think because of that mentality and that culture, the lack of respect for women, we're seeing now that there is a... Well, I'm going to use the word decrease, or maybe it's more noticeable now because we're paying more attention to it, right? But I'm sure if we think back to when we were younger and growing up and we hear our parents speaking, we would realize that women weren't valued. They were just seen as objects. They were seen as there for the pleasure of the man, right? And a man could do with a woman whatever he wants. You know, as I was preparing for this and I was reflecting, I remember stories growing up. It was known in the village, for example, that, you know, Mr. X is beating his wife every day, but nobody was stepping in. It was just a conversation that would happen in homes, you know. Oh, do you know what? Oh, and people would run out and see, but who would step in to help?
But right? It was normalized, and hence
to a certain
it was not
degree.
Viewed as anything.
Right, so it wasn't seen as detrimental to women, and the way women would then view themselves, right, and the way men would then hold women, right? Because when we talk about, if we were to go to the case in point, you know, crimes like that is about control. It's about, I can do whatever I want to you, and you have no say. So I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of our culture, in terms of the way we raise our children, and a lot of the changes that we want to see, we may not see it in our lifetime. But if we can start now, and the generations that are coming up, we can start changing that mindset, inculcating the things that we would like to see. Hopefully, you know, in 10, well, maybe not 10, but 20 years down the road, we would find that women are viewed better and some of the crimes that we're seeing, because we're never going to eliminate the crimes. It's not going to be 100% elimination, but we'll see a decrease in these types of crimes and an increase in the respect and the way women are viewed in society.
Let me ask you this, because I am a strong advocate for children. I'm one that never blames children for any of the wrongs that they do, because I believe that they may make behaviors that they observe.
Yes.
And if your proposition is to be true and we are to see changes within the next 10 to 20 years, it doesn't start with our children, I will argue. It starts with us.
Yes, because we would have to model the behavior that we want. And that's what I'm saying. When I say we start with them, in the sense of we making that change to start modeling what it is we want to see down the road. Because, and I zeroed in on children because they're still malleable. You know, we're old. Some of us are so set in our ways, it's going to be hard to make that shift. Not say it because we're set in our ways, you're not going to try, because you have to keep trying. But once we start, those of us who know, right, and who has that responsibility and has taken on that responsibility, we are quote-unquote the professionals, we are trained, it starts with us. So if we're starting to model the behaviors, because quite frankly, some of us as professionals, we talk the talk, but we don't walk the walk, right? And we have to start, because talking the talk and walking the walk, because we will tell you, oh, you need to do this and you need to do that. And then when we're placed in certain situations, we totally forget our training, we forget everything, and the baseless come out.
We're also conscious of the fact that gender-based violence traverses race,
yes,
traverses socioeconomic status,
yes,
etc. It's prevalent throughout.
It is.
And hence the starting with us is all sectors of society.
Exactly.
Sometimes we zero in on the poor people and believe they are the ones that are perpetuating the crime, and that's not the case.
And we also have to remember too, it's not just violence against women, it's violence against men as well, right? Because we do have women who abuse their men. But you may find, and Andrea may speak to this better than I can, but a lot of times the men, because again, ego, right? And the way men are viewed, because they're supposed to be strong and macho, they may not report, right? But then based on the data that we have, we can say, okay, extrapolate and say this percentage of men may not be reporting. They're being abused and not reporting.
Andrea, if you can, what would you say is the current state of play when we look at violence against women and girls? And I recognize that you're no longer the head of the SVU, but you have vast experience in the type of cases you were exposed to.
Right, so thank you, Colin. And I would say definitely there's been a significant increase in the number of reported incidents. I recall when the Special Victims Unit was established late September of 2018. From that date to the end of December 2018, there were a total of 84 incidents reported just to the Special Victims Unit alone. Now, there could be multiple factors responsible for why people would want to report, either increase generally in the occurrence, or from what we've observed, people have gained more confidence in the justice system. Just dovetailing on what Debbie shared earlier, you would realize there's been a paradigm shift from some of the norms. It's no longer normalized. People are becoming more aware, more conscious, more educated on their rights, on where to get help, and they are coming forward and report. So there may be areas for concern and for improvement, but generally, by and large, there's been a significant increase in the number of incidents involving gender-based violence.
If you can, just for the general public, what is the mandate of the SVU?
So the Special Victims Unit primarily has overarching responsibility throughout the trial and state of Grenada, Carrico, and Petit Martinique to address all forms of gender-based violence and to ensure that it's done in an expeditious manner to work with all entities, especially the social partners and civil society organizations in addressing those issues in a timely and efficient manner.
Okay. And you did mention opening in September and by December, 84 cases. September, October, November, December. If let me see, average 30 days. In 120 days, you had 84 cases reported. I mean, you know, that's a significant number. You're talking about 3/4 of the days. There was some incidents, at least one that rose to the level of being reported. What are some of the cases that we typically would see being reported to the SVU?
All types of cases. A lot of the incidents reported addresses young girls between the ages of 13 and 16. And I have a concern, and I want to implore on parents. We have normalized as a society sexual relations with young girls at the age of 13, and people no longer see it as a crime. It is a crime. It's still on our law books, and this is one of the things I spend quite a bit of time working with the society and the community at large to educate our parents, to work with the schools to ensure that we bring about that change of mindset in terms of how we address those issues. We also saw 13, well, above 16. A lot of our young girls are involved in relationships with adult males. And parents, in particular women, are condoning those behaviors because they are accepting gifts, they are accepting monies for the sale of their children. We also saw a few incidents involving our boys, and we know now more than before, no longer is the girls the only concern, but we have to express concern for our boys as well. We had a few incidents coming forward. So by and large, between 13 and 16 and above 16, we've had significant numbers of incidents of sexual assaults. We've had physical assaults to some extent as well on our young children, and domestic violence of adult females. So gender-based violence in general, but a lot of it had to do with domestic abuse of young girls and adult females.
Okay. Kerri, if I'm to loop you into the conversation, what is your take on the extent of gender-based violence in Grenada? And I think you're the youngest one among us, so we certainly will want to hear your take on it and that of your peers. Kerri, I'm not sure if you heard the question. But
no, I didn't hear everything I got. What is my take on
gender-based violence in Grenada? Yes.
Okay, so it is indeed a very concerning issue. It is indeed very prevalent, and it's unfortunate. It may seem like a stretch to say all women in Grenada would have encountered an indecent encounter at some point in their life, be it against a male, most predominantly against males, an indecent encounter where you feel violated. Or you may have known another young woman who was violated, and more often at the hands of a male. I was listening to a report recently where 65% of the cases that go before our criminal court is of a sexual nature. That is quite an alarming figure. And I was on this show recently where I noted that all of the cases that go to court of this nature, they tend to stay a long time in our judicial system, and persons do not feel justice is being served, and many of those cases often get thrown out. There is a lot of education out there on gender-based violence, but it's not reaching the people it should reach to where they can get the help that they truly need or deserve. So I would say it's a very pressing issue, and it's time to start looking at the data and applying solutions based on data. I know that even the Child Protection Authority does their count on the violence that is meted out against children, and it's further broken down into sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and it's further broken down to different parishes. And I think as a forward-thinking nation, we need to use that data and reach out or have the most impact on communities that are affected. We talk about it on our large scale, but it's time we really get into the communities that are most affected, provide solutions, provide a policing presence, provide sessions or discussions, not just on a national level, but within the communities itself, so that we can indeed reach the people that are most affected, because it is indeed very prevalent. 65% is alarming, and we need to be more strategic about how we approach it, and not just talk about it on a national level, but really go into our communities and deal with it.
Thank you. Jackie?
I wanted to actually pick up on this issue of the reporting rates, because I know Andrea made the point that, yes, there seems to be, increased numbers, but we do know that one of the things about gender-based violence, both sex offenses and domestic violence, is that it is still one of the most underreported of all offenses, yes? And so the rule of thumb that the experts use is that usually only about 1 in 10 of these cases actually gets reported. And then we talk about, increasing, like that perhaps the public is growing more confident about the system. I query that a little bit, because the studies are telling us that, in fact, one of the reasons why people are not reporting some of these types of offenses is their lack of confidence in the system, both at the law enforcement and justice system levels, right? The administration of justice, and not feeling that these cases are dealt with as expeditiously as it can be, and that point was raised. They do not. Do you know that in our region, in fact, globally, the conviction rate for sex offenses is less than 3%? Now, that's not of the cases that necessarily get to trial and then you secure or do not secure a conviction. This is from the point at which the offense is reported. Okay. Because of, even from the time the offense is committed, the conviction rate is undermined by the fact that reporting is low, attrition of cases. So after the report and even after the charge, many of the cases drop off, and they drop off for many different reasons. One or two were mentioned about bribes, right? Cash settlements, especially of sex offenses involving children. But also because of victims just being totally fed up with the way in which the system is handling these matters, right? The delay, the lack of sensitivity, the lack of preparation of victims for court. I mean, we've done the studies, and I hope to be able to speak to some of this, that tells us that, reporting rates, as much as the reporting rates are going up, we're still not confident that this gets to the true number of cases. This is still just the tip of the iceberg.
Lack of confidence, Debbie, within the legal and judicial system. What is your take on that perception? And sometimes you would hear a victim going into a police station, for example, and being mocked and not feeling abused yet again.
Yes, and that is so true, and the victims normally feel re-traumatized. You see, we ask people to report. We're begging them, come out, report what's going on so you can have your day in court. But then when a victim comes forward, half the time we don't believe them because their story may not sound plausible, depending on how it happened, right? So, for example, you may have a couple who went out on a date. They may have started kissing, for example, or fondling each other, and at one point, the woman may have said, "I want to stop here," but then the man may retort, "Well, you have aroused me, you have gotten me to this point, how dare you?" And because it may have happened that way, you may have that woman being told, "Well, you lead him on, you led him on," right? So sometimes they don't report, and because of the fear of not being believed.
Do you see that also the victims feel somewhat responsible for placing themselves in that position?
The guilt. So they're saying, "It's my fault." So now you have to get, and if you have the person to whom they're reported, because sometimes they may not go directly, even if they go to the police, they may, depending on the age and that, so they may have to report, maybe talk to a counselor, maybe, so they're thinking, "Well, I led them on, I should not have gone there, or I should not have worn this, or I should not have said that," So they're now taking on that blame on themselves. And there are times society also contributes to that because they're saying, "Well, she looked for it. Why was she whining like that? Why did she wear that piece of shorts? Couldn't she have dressed that?" You see, so we re-victimize, even though we're asking them to report. In the process of trying to help them, we make comments and we say things that re-victimize them. And then you have the situation where you have gone through a traumatic experience. You report it to the police. You give the police your story. Then they say, "Well, okay, you need to go to the doctor." You give the doctor your story. Then, you need to go to the counselor. So you have this process of repeating your story over and over, and then when you get to court, you have to repeat the story again. So some victims are like, "No, I'm fed up, I'm done," because what we fail to realize is that every time we if it's not done in a sensitive manner, we are causing this person to relive this trauma, so they never get past the trauma. And then eventually they're like, "You know what? I'm tired of repeating my story." And they just want to close that chapter, right? They want to close the chapter. Right. And then, as Andrea pointed out, and I think Jackie also spoke to it, the case may take a while to go through the court. You go to court today, you take a day off work, you go to court, we adjourned, and we adjourned, and we adjourned. And eventually it's like, "You know what? Adjourn it forever. I'm done." So we have to be mindful, and I know we have a lot of work to do, in our judicial process, and so we have to be mindful that these are some of the things that can contribute to persons not reporting.
Andrea, Kerri made the point that we have data. The CPA, for example, goes through painstaking detail in who, what, where, when, etc. What would you say as to some of the reasons why we have not drilled down on the data and launched intervention programs based on this empirical evidence?
I think there could be a multiplicity of factors, and there are programs that are in place, but I believe everyone is working in silos. So there must be a holistic approach. There must be an interdisciplinary approach in terms of addressing these issues. There must be public consultation, national consultation, and getting all stakeholders on board. So the civil society organizations, the non-governmental organization, the PTAs, the churches, the schools, everyone needs to understand that it's everybody's business, and we all have our part to play. So instead of working in our own separate spaces, pulling resources together, because oftentimes you hear Grenada complain, we don't have funds. Jackie will tell you that there are funds to find. And so I believe it's understanding how crucial these things are and working together to ensure that these issues are addressed so that it can be curtailed.
Is this another cultural challenge that we have where we all want the glory of solving the problem and we don't collaborate and pool our resources to actually solve the problem?
I think so. Everybody wants to be in the spotlight and to say this entity is doing this or this entity is doing that. And there are a lot that has been done, and we all might not be aware of it, but I know the state, I know the police has been doing quite a bit in recent years. There's been a shift in terms of how they perceive domestic violence, in how they respond. There's been improvement in the legislation in terms of the police standing orders, which I can speak to later on, but a lot has been done. A lot has been done to educate the public, and I know from the ministry's perspective there is this major parenting program to work with parents, to inform parents, to empower parents so that they'll be able to identify these issues in their children and for themselves.
I think, honestly, one of our challenges is always implementation. Because even the issue of lack of coordination, that it's not a cohesive state response, we have tried to address that. Just a few years ago, 2 years ago, under the Spotlight Initiative, right, Grenada developed standard operating procedures, what we call SOPs, to address gender-based violence, including sex offenses. I know about them because I was part of that process. And we looked at it multi-sectorally. So we looked at it from law enforcement, medical, social services, and the justice sector. And we created, along the continuum of the victim's entry point into the system, from reporting to a police officer right through to the doctor, to her or his first contact with the justice system with a bail hearing, to the preliminary inquiry, to the trial, and then the social service sector and the safety nets that should be provided, whether it's shelter, housing, whatever. We looked at all of that, and we developed very detailed operating procedures. But I am not satisfied that we have been able to effectively implement. It's a process. I agree. We have seen the policing responses get better, but the gradient, it was so steep that they're still not where they need to be, right? We have seen, for me, of course, I come at this from law enforcement, from the justice perspective. I'm a lawyer by training. And I see the scope for so much improvement in our justice responses. It's not just the issue of delay. We have some serious problems with how the justice system is also operating in terms of even evidentiary issues when it comes to sexual offenses, the need still to be running a preliminary inquiry, right, as opposed to paper committals where victims have to give evidence twice. We did a situation analysis of how policing, law enforcement, and justice responses have been dealing with sex offenses in this country. And we have identified many of the challenges, and we have some serious work to do.
All right. Serious work to do, and viewers and listeners, we'll be right back. More as to the victims themselves and what type of support services they are available. We'll be right back.
want $10 on Playway, $20 backup on Pick 3, and cash for each, please. Okay, are you adding multi-X to your bet? Yes, multi-X, all of them. Smart. Best value bet. Backup and multi-X. You cannot go wrong. Don't matter the bets, multi-X all of the daily games.
With multi-X added, your winnings can be multiplied 3 times, 5 times, even 7 times. So make it a rule. Add multi-X to all your Playway, daily Pick 3, and daily cash for bets every day and for every draw, and watch your money grow. Available at stores and online.
You heard it here. Multiply your winnings daily. Must be 18 or older to play. NLA, making your dreams come true.
Well, good evening, players. Welcome. It is time for the NLA's Daily Pick 3 with Multi-X evening draw for today, Monday, the 16th day in February 2026. I'm Lexan Fletcher, and I'll be your draw hostess for this evening. And joining me is Miss Keneve Edwards. She's here representing RSO and Company Limited, accountants and advisors. Ms. Edwards is here to ensure the games are conducted in a fair and accountable manner, that the game balls have not been tampered with and are within industry standards. Now, don't forget, with a Pick 3 game, you can bet as little as $1 on inline mix and pair tickets, and from $2 on backup tickets. I do have some information to share with you as it regards to something truly exciting coming your way. Something is about to pop. Get ready to pop with Cash Pop. It's a brand new game which will be brought to you by the NLA, and that starts from Friday the 20th of February 2026. Now, this new game will comprise 15 numbers called pops to select from, with every number or pop having the same odds of being drawn. Draws will be conducted 5 times a day at 8:45, 11:45, 8:45 a.m., 11:45 a.m., 2:45 p.m., 4:45 p.m., and the final 8:45 p.m. Monday to Saturday. The first Cash Pop draw will happen after sales close at 2:45 p.m. It's available online and also at all authorized NLA agents. So look out for the official launch this Friday. Yep, this Friday at the NLA service centers at Beer Street Mall in St. George's and also Jubilee Street in Grenville. Happy gaming, folks. It's a brand new one coming your way. Get ready for Cash Pop. So let's find out now what the winning numbers will be for this evening. It pays to play. Good luck to you. Time to recap. First number was 4, the second 9, final 9. If you're a winner, congratulations to you. Let's find out now what the winning multi-X ball will be. Good luck to you if you placed your bets. So to you again, if you're a winner this evening, congratulations to you, and to the 71 winners from the afternoon draw, congrats to you all. We had a total payout of $8,730. Stay tuned, stay close by. We've got Playway with Multi-X coming up next. See you then. Welcome back, players. It's time for the evening draw for the Playway game with Multi-X for today, Monday, the 16th of February 2026. I've got Miss Keneve Edwards with me once again. She's here representing RSO and Company Limited accountants and advisors. Here's a reminder with the Playway game. Don't forget, all you got to do is bet as little as $1 up to $10, or in increments on any number or dream symbol of your choice, and get to win 24 times the amount you bet. That's $24 for every dollar spent. Hope you got your tickets. Let's find out now what the winning Playway number will be for this evening. Value your dreams, win your way with Playway. Good luck. And the winning Playway number is number 10. The 1010 dream symbol is police. If you're a winner, congratulations to you. And let's find out what that winning multi-X ball will be right now. Good luck to you. And the winning multi-X ball. Play. Just Play or FP. And if you're a winner again, congratulations to you. Congrats also to all the winners from the afternoon round. We had a total of 357 winners with a total payout of $50,688. Stay tuned for the next one. Cash for a draw with Multi-X. See you then. Welcome back, players. It is time for the evening draw for the daily cash for a game with Multi-X for today, Monday, the 16th of February, 2026. And I've got Miss Knife Edwards with me once again. She's representing Marrast Company Limited Accountants and Advisors. And with the cash for a game, don't forget, you can bet as little as $1 on most of the bet times with the exception of backup, in which case you bet $2. So if you got your tickets, it's time to reveal the winning numbers. It's more plays, bigger prizes. Good luck. And the first number is number 6, the second 4, third 4, and the final 6. All right, so we definitely got some doubles. Let's recap, double check your tickets. First up was 6, the second 4, third 4, final 6. If you're a winner, congrats to you. Let's find out now what the winning Multi-X ball will be. Good luck. And the winning Multi-X ball, straight play. So again, if you're a winner for this round, congratulations to you. Congrats also to the 6 winners from the afternoon draw with a total payout of $950. Don't forget, we got a lotto draw coming up right around the corner. Hope you got your tickets. The estimated jackpot for this evening is $104,000. See you then. Welcome back once again, players. It's time for Lotto draw number 3911 for this evening, Monday, the 16th of February, 2026. The estimated jackpot for this evening is $104,000. And joining me once again is Miss Knife Edwards. She's representing Marrast Company Limited Accountants and Advisors. Hope you got your tickets. Let's find out firstly what the free ticket letter will be. Good luck to you. G as in good. That's G as in good. And it's time to move on. Let's find out now. The 5 winning numbers will be for this evening's jackpot of $104,000. If you got your tickets, good luck to you. All right, check your tickets. First number, 22. Second number, 20. The third number is 23. If you have your tickets, double check them. I'll recap the 5 winning numbers. But before that, don't forget, just to remind you, the free ticket letter was G as in good. That's G as in good. And to recap, first number was 22. That's 2222. The second number, 2020. Third number was 23. That's 2323. The fourth was 9099. And the final, 11. That's 1111. This has been Lotto Play and Win a Lot. Certainly hope you got a winner for this evening. To all our winners, congratulations again. And don't forget, every time you place your bets, you're helping to support sports, culture, and nation building. Have a good night.
It happens to all of us. Low on cash and in need of money right away. Play Instacash Monday to Sunday and there are no draws.
So what you saying? No numbers to choose from?
Nope.
And no draw sessions to wait on?
Nope.
And we can play it anytime and any day?
Yep. Including Sundays. Instacash. Ask for it by name and choose from a wide variety of games as low as $2 and win instantly. It is fast, it is easy to play, and you win cash right away. Must be 18 years or older to play. NLA, making your dreams come true.
Viewers and listeners, it's Beyond the Tragedy as we look at the impact of gender-based violence in Grenada. Kerri, and if I am to resume with you and assist us in identifying some of the gaps you may have observed in how we support the victims of these crimes. What gaps are there, and what can we do to close those gaps and better serve and support those individuals?
Definitely. I can shed light on a few observations that were made in terms of supporting the victims. One, it is commendable, it is applaudable that grief counselors were deployed to the communities to engage with the persons affected, the entire surrounding area. That is something that's commendable. I will say from observations, experience of time past, this is short-lived. Persons do have the option to further get counseling support, but oftentimes they have to travel out of the community to the nearest town. And as you can appreciate, the nearest town to groceries, either Grenville or St. George's. And that distance is sometimes a deterrent for persons to continue receiving the support that they need. So I would recommend that we utilize our clinics, which is more accessible to the community itself, so that persons can continue receiving intervention that they need. It is time that we not only have doctors in our clinics, but we have psychologists and counselors that community members can easily go to get the type of support that they need. So there's a gap there for intervention to continue. I would also talk about community policing a little more. I don't know, how often have you, when was the last time you actually see police officers out in the villages on a foot patrol, besides having a roadblock to either check vehicle inspections or to check, or they're on a manhunt, or there is some event and they're just doing a check? I think we need more foot patrolling in our villages. Get to know the people, get to know the area, so that persons would feel more connected to the agents that are there to serve and protect them, and they would readily offer up information to police officers if need be. So I sense that there is a gap there also in terms of how community policing is done now, but they are doing remarkable work, I must say, with social media in terms of reaching young people, because a lot of young people are on social media, but I still feel their physical presence needs to be felt in the communities as well. And I mentioned earlier about using the data that is provided through our court system in terms of how many reported cases there are, and further breaking down that data into the affected parishes or communities. So when you talk about intervention, you may know that you need to reach out in St. Andrews or spend a little more time in St. Andrews dealing with matters of a sexual nature or dealing with domestic violence more, because there are communities that are more affected than others, and you want to ensure that you are indeed reaching the people that needs help. It's good to do things on a national level. You feel a sense of importance when you do it on a national level, but if you really want to reach people, you need to go where they are. And I think these are where some of the gaps is. We have intervention support, but we're not meeting the people essentially where they are. and we're asking people to come out to us, and sometimes that's not always possible because of the distance. Even though we are a small country, traveling to St. George's to see a counselor maybe once a week or twice a week is not practical or ideal for someone living in St. Andrews, or maybe even going to Granville, but they can go to the nearest clinic to get support. And I think these are some of the gaps that needs to be addressed when we provide intervention.
Okay. Andrea, how possible is it to respond to Kerri Ann's call for foot patrols, for example? And there has been some step up in terms of the community relations department within the RGPF, but remaining connected to the villages. How practical is that?
Very relevant and very necessary. Of course, if the officers are present in the communities, they will be able to reach the people at their level. You realize when you engage the community, people feel more comfortable speaking to the officers and sharing information. One of the hallmarks of policing and solving crime is that we must do it with the community. They are the ones who provide the information. So I've seen some thrust on the level of the Commissioner of Police to ensure that there is improvement in these areas, but it is very vital. You would realize when you reach the community, you narrow the gap between the police and the public, and you create that avenue for people to feel comfortable to share information. Sometimes you cultivate relevant informants, as the case may be, so people who pass information, especially in these sensitive areas where people are not readily open to talking to the police.
We see crimes of this nature typically being solved, or at least people being arrested in short order. What can be done for us to prevent these crimes? I mean, it seems that that might be one thing. So we don't want to solve the crime. We want to prevent that young lady from losing her life, from being traumatized and scarred for the rest of her life. What are some of the other things you believe that can be done as a preventive measures in that regard?
And we must be proactive. As a society, as I mentioned earlier, we all have a responsibility to play. And early reporting of concerns. So, for example, in the community, it takes a village to raise a child. And a lot of the issues that we see surfacing in those areas is because parents are not attuned to what is happening with their children. I must mention, with the influence of social media, now more than before, it's even more difficult for parents to identify these issues that occur with their children, with their young people, and so on.
And what are some of the red flags, if you can?
Right. So it's important for parents to adequately supervise. You don't want to leave children by themselves. You must ensure that they are left with people who are capable of supervising, not their grandparents who need to be supervised themselves, but people who are capable and trusting people as well. You can trust them. Now, a lot of these situations start in the home. You might find a young lady, for example, always out of the home. She's running away, and she's labeled as a troublemaker or a delinquent. But why is she running away? She's running away because something is happening in the home. And parents need to be attuned. We need to pay attention. Even in the community level, a lot of these things, people may observe what's happening. Parents might be the last to know. What do you do about it? Do you report anonymously, even if you do not want to be known as someone who reported? Do you speak to that child? You'll find as well some young people, or people in general, there is a sudden change in their attitude. They become aggressive. They become very outspoken, and we call them disrespectful. But sometimes they are lashing out because they are frustrated and they do not know how to deal with a situation of some form of abuse, and they're hoping that someone will pick up on it so that they can share what is happening with them. Now, a lot of these people, victims, they try to avoid the perpetrator, right? And you might find they're afraid of a particular person, or they do not want to be around them by themselves. We need to pick up on that. In some instances, again, mental health challenges surface. So issues of depression, issues of anxiety and suicide ideation. These are all concerns that we need to take a second look at to question what is happening with that child. There are instances as well that I can speak of where you find young people spending a lot of monies. You should ask a question. You didn't give them those monies. Where did they get it? They have a lot of expensive items, gadgets. You want to question them because somebody might be giving them those monies. Something is happening that you need to pay attention to. And as members of the community, as parents, one of the gaps is that parents may not be as savvy as the children, so they do not know how to monitor and supervise because these children spend a lot of time on the social media gadgets. And how do you know what they're doing? Because they are smarter than you are, so they might quickly turn off what they're looking at when you come to look at them. So it's important for civil society and the community by extension to provide that kind of support, to probably provide training for parents and caregivers and members of the community in general so that they will be equipped to be able to deal with these incidents.
And Debbie, Kerri mentioned the counseling services, but that seems to be a challenge by way of continued access. It doesn't seem to be a sustainable program as she described it. How do we bring about healing for, unfortunately, in the recent case, would only be for the families and the community members and classmates. For the survivors, how do we go about bringing about healing?
Counseling is important, and in that regard, right? Getting them to talk about it, but in a controlled way. And as we said, I know the Ministry of Social Development, when an event happens, in the immediate aftermath, as Kerri alluded to, they would provide the counseling, but sustaining it is a difficult task because, again, there are challenges within the system. Do we have enough counselors to go around, right? So we do not, let me just say that, we do not have enough counselors to go around. And then going into private counseling can be difficult. It can be an expense that the family or the victim cannot afford. But we have to look at ways that we can provide that in a long-term manner.
I think what I heard from Kerri is that our concept of healthcare needs to be beyond someone gets a cut. Or diabetes and hypertension, but rather the mental health issues as well.
But we can say we can staff the clinics, and I'm kind of playing the both sides in a sense, because yes, we can make it more accessible through our community in our health centers, but do we have the manpower, right, to staff? And again, do we have enough counselors? And we do find that a lot of us that go off to study and train and come back here is because it's not about making a living, it's for us, many of us, our calling. Because if we go to talk about what we are paid, we will probably not be working here, right? We will be somewhere else in some other country. So it's challenging, right? We know what needs to be done, but getting it done, it is extremely challenging, right? So maybe what we may need to look at is, and I know we can find the funds, right? How can we provide that victim with maybe the bus fare, right, to get, or maybe help them with, after the ministry provides, help them probably with private sessions, right? Maybe subsidized sessions, maybe pay for it in full until we get them to that point where they can function again in society. Because therapy, and especially with dealing with cases like these, is for some people a lifetime journey, right? For others, it may take maybe 6 months, a year, and they get to that point where they can function in society again. They can go about their lives, not, I wouldn't say as normal, but as close to normal as possible without being re-traumatized, without, you know, looking over their shoulders constantly. For others, they have to be in therapy for the rest of their lives. So I really cannot, and if I'm to be honest, like say, this is how we do it. This is what we need to do, because it's challenging. We know what we should do, but how we go about doing it, because the funds may not be available, or it may be available, but it may not be such that can attract the counselors and the therapists or fund the program. Because even sometimes for some of the programs that we do provide, and Andrea mentioned like the parenting program, from my experience, we do it, it's done maybe, let's say, in this quarter, and then you may not be able to do it in the next quarter because of funding and other challenges. So it's about trying to get the programs to be sustainable. And that is where the challenge lies.
Commitment, recognizing the importance and elevating this to the level where we are committed to have it year-round.
Yes, and I often say that being in social services and social development is not attractive, right? So sometimes we don't get the support, for want of a better way of putting it, that is needed, because there may be a project that is much more attractive. And we talked about, you know, the praise and whatnot that may bring that praise, because it's not instant gratification with social.
And the type of thing where we talk about this for 6 days and then we move on.
Exactly.
And the monies that we need to support it must be year-round.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that's another thing too. And an event occurs, we raise up in arms. We're all the proverbial placard, you know, and we're there, and as you say, 6 days later, something has happened and we forget that we want this change. So what we need to do as a nation, as communities, as individuals, is keep that change that we are working towards in the forefront, right? When it is no longer the it thing, right? When it's no longer that bandwagon for us to jump on, we should still be talking about it, right? I think a couple years ago, we had a set of suicides that happened, and we were like, oh, mental health. We had programs, you know, you're on similar programs talking about mental health. And then 6 months down the road, mental health is back on the back burner. So we have to keep these things in the forefront. It's not attractive. We wouldn't get the instant praise. If you're looking for instant praise and gratification, it won't come, right?
I would dare say, therefore, politicians don't pay attention to it because of that point. Okay,
Exactly.
I will see. I don't want to talk around it. Jackie, the perpetrators of these crimes, how do we handle them? Are we satisfied with the judicial system? What are the laws on the books? Are we going about the repercussions for these crimes appropriately?
Well, Colin, we've done some law reform, but we still have a long ways to go. And I'm not suggesting that the law or policy is the magical wand by which we're going to remedy this situation, but we do know that law and policy is a powerful tool, right? So and that's my entry point. You know, I embrace and I understand, you know, all of the societal issues and the fact that, you know, the public has a role to play, we all have a role to play, but to me the buck stops with the state, with due diligence. Right? There's a principle that says at the end of the day, and this is an international human rights principle, you know, the state must ensure the safety of victims and they must hold perpetrators accountable. And I think that there is still room for improvement. We know, for example, there was an ACCP report. That was the Association of Commissioners of Police for the region. We did a baseline study across 10 Caribbean countries. I was involved in that, and the findings then, which is almost 10 years ago now, we did more recent research, and the issues are very similar. And some recommendations were made back then. We know, for example, we've talked about the systemic delay in the justice system. We've made suggestions as to how that could be addressed. You know, codifying certain periods of time that things have to be done within. We've talked about paper committals. Right now, paper committals can only be done really when defense counsel want consent to that. Well, offenses like this, sex offenses, domestic violence, those kinds of gender-based violence, generally you will find that, you know, one of the strategies is to wear down the victim, right? So how often will you get consent? I'm not saying all defense counsel will do that, but we can see a pattern, yes? There are issues around, for example, the introduction potentially of dangerous offender legislation. That has been talked about. Dangerous offender legislation, which we don't have, would allow for repeat offenders of dangerous, violent crime to be dealt with in a different way. Right? That will not be, you know, that take precedence over sentencing principles, over sentencing guidelines, that says that we're going to put the protection of society first because this person has demonstrated by repeatedly committing these types of very violent offenses that we may have to treat with them in a different way. Right? So that's one thing that we could be looking at. There's also some measures, and I'm not saying, I think we need to look at them and decide if they are fit for our national context. But we have some victim safety and offender accountability measures that have been taken in other countries. For example, the use of the anklet bracelets, right? Has been very effective in some of the countries that use them. Allows us to monitor the whereabouts of offenders after they've been released. We cannot, for some of these offenders, dangerous offender legislation will allow you to have them locked up almost indefinitely, but that's not going to be the norm. Offenders have the right to serve their sentence. They have the right to be treated fairly, and most of them can and will be released. If they are released, then how do we better guarantee the safety of the public? And the public has a vested interest in crime. You know, to suggest that, you know, for example, that we shouldn't be even discussing some of these cases because, you know, matters are ongoing. No, we shouldn't discuss the specifics of cases. But crimes do not only affect the individual victim. Crimes affect the public. And we recognize the public interest element of crime. And so anklets, there are other measures like, for example, using what you call risk assessment tools. Anytime that a repeat offender is going to be released, do a risk assessment. There are tools to determine whether this person is safe, whether the society will be safe if this person is released. There are more controversial measures like community notification. Should communities be notified when a dangerous offender, a repeat offender, who has not been who is not being held indefinitely because they didn't meet that threshold to invoke dangerous offender legislation if it did exist, but nevertheless are going to be released. Should communities, should society be notified of their release?
When you said more controversial, I thought you were going to say something like castration.
Well, I mean, when we start talking about measures that can be taken, I mean, rehabilitative measures, you can have your counseling, you can have your more therapeutic type of interventions, but you can also, and there has been this suggestion that chemical castration could be considered. I remember one case, Colin, in which, in the capacity in which I was operating at that time, I had the offender telling me that he had uncontrollable urges. Uncontrollable urges. This was not about power and control. This was about something that was clearly wrong. And he had repeatedly molested a child, a family member. And he said, I could not help myself. Tearfully, he was making that disclosure and said, I wish there was something that could be done to help remove these urges. Yes. So, I mean, even if we are not going to mandate it, impose it, should it be available for those who say, listen, this is a remedy I am seeking, this is an intervention, this is that I need. So there are a whole host of, I think, measures that it's time that we look at what's happening in other places and spaces. Not that we're following suit, but that we have to assess them and determine whether these measures have any, resonate with us in our Grenadian context. What variation on some of these measures could we implement? And I think we really need to, in addition to the number of recommendations that have already been made about justice sector reform, what happens with bail hearings, what happens at trials, support for victims, not only support before and after the fact, but we have a situation where victims are going through the justice system with little to no court-connected support. So one of the things that came out of the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, was shouldn't we have a victim support unit that helps accompany victims to court, helps provide for their transportation, helps ensure that they know about adjournment dates. Do you know how many victims have missed a court date because they did not know the date on which a matter had been adjourned to, right? Who are told, for example, that the offender has been released on bail. We have victims that used to be coming into us when I was at the Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic, had no clue that their assailant had been released. Didn't know the conditions of that release. So a bail has been secured, but not discussed with the victim. Okay. So there's some low-hanging fruit, things that can be done that I think can be easily remedied, and then there are those things that I think we need to really look at to assess whether we can go in that direction.
Okay. Viewers and listeners, let's take our second break, and when we come back, you certainly can weigh in. 440-1252, that will be the number. See you shortly.
Whether you're refreshing a bedroom or giving your home a bold new look, the Color Shop has the perfect paint and tools to make it happen, inside and out. With quality finishes for every surface and accessories to match, we make painting easy from start to finish. Whether it's a DIY weekend or a contractor starting a brand new project, the Color Shop is the trusted choice.
Looking to shop online from your favorite stores like Amazon and Shein? With GPC Global, it's never been easier. Get your very own US address and shop from around the world. With GPC Global, you can order the latest trends and must-have items, all delivered straight to Grenada to your closest post office for your pickup. We offer the cheapest rates, and our service is reliable and quick. No more waiting for weeks for your packages. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. Join the Grenada Postal family today and start shopping smarter. Visit us online at www.grenadapostal.com or call us on 437-POST. That's 437-7678. GPC Global, your gateway to the world.
In Grenada, sports aren't just a game, they're a way of life. They teach discipline, teamwork, and resilience. They inspire the next generation to push boundaries and chase excellence. That's why the Investment Migration Agency of Grenada is proud to support sports initiatives as part of our commitment to youth and national development. When we invest in sports programs, we invest in the future. We invest in the health and well-being of our youth, and we invest in broadening Grenada's reach, proudly connecting our athletes, our talent, and our nation to a global community. Together, we all go further. The Investment Migration Agency, unlocking the possibilities.
Are you looking for a reliable, affordable, and customer-friendly pharmacy? Look no further than Hills and Valley Pharmacy, the nation's leading healthcare products and services provider. We are committed to serving you at convenient locations. Find an extensive and affordable selection of prescription and over-the-counter drugs and medical supplies at Church Street, Hillsborough, Carriacou, Jubilee Street, Grenville, St. Andrew, near the bus terminal, and Halifax and Grenville Street, St. George. Our committed team is always available to offer valuable assistance for managing your health and wellness. Discover the additional benefits of our wholesale distribution on Halifax Street and our Medcare Center on Grenville Street, where we provide in-house physiotherapy, massage therapy, doctor consultations, and eye care services. Our commitment is to satisfy all your healthcare needs, including competitive prices, loyalty rewards, and special discounts for seniors. Contact us at 435-6904 and WhatsApp 535-4734. Choose Hills and Valley Pharmacy. Remember, your health is our business.
Viewers and listeners, it's Beyond the Tragedy is the conversation, and Kerri, if you can make some recommendations as to how do we have a national intervention, whether it is through the schools or otherwise. I would leave it up to you in terms of what type of recommendations you would make in order for us to begin to address this tragedy. There seems to be a significant delay, and Kerri is frozen on us. But interventions, we are talking about how we are going to, or some possibilities of addressing the perpetrators of this crime. Can everyone be helped, or are some of these perpetrators so far gone that we have to take some serious measures? I'll start with you, Andrea, then I'll come to Debbie and come around.
Well, in all situations, everyone definitely cannot be helped. There are some persons who have reached a state, I would want to believe, that they will need intervention, as Jackie suggested, maybe the chemical castration and other methods that we believe can ensure that society is protected from them and they do not repeat those offenses or harm which will be destructive to our people. One of the things I know that's done, maybe not to that extent, but the polygraph as well, is also something that is used to test persons at a certain point, maybe twice a year. For example, sex offenders in the US, for example, they do that. Even in Grenada, some of our police officers are trained they are polygraph examiners, and maybe that is one of the interim measures that can be done, not with the seasoned offender or repeated offender, but with those who are released. They can do that to monitor where they're at and what measures need to be taken for them as well.
Debbie, as a behavioral scientist, where do you come down on this? Can some be helped? What should we do?
Yes, some can be helped. That's the fact. And just to echo, reiterate what Andrea said, we cannot help everyone. However, that doesn't mean we stop or we just focus on a particular population or a segment of the population. We have to go in with the mindset that we are going in to reach everyone, because we never know who we're going to reach. But we also know that we will not reach everyone. There are some people who are, their wires are so badly messed up that no matter what you do, they will not change. And remember too, we're going out to reach people, but at the same time, if that person has to want that change. So we can do everything in our power to help that person, but if they're not there with us, right? And there are tools out there that we can utilize in addition, and I know in addition to the counseling, as we say, the talk therapy and so on, medication can be used. And I know it's a taboo topic because in my former job, that was one of the fights that we had when we talked about utilizing medication. But we have to be realistic and we have to be honest. If we're talking about changing, if we're talking about reducing the rates at which these crimes occur, and we know that a major factor in some of these is mental health, right? Mental health issues that some of the perpetrators are experiencing. We have to be honest in that, to admit that we need to medicate some people, right? And sometimes medication is not for the long haul. It can just be to get them to that point where they would listen and be willing to hear you out, to be willing to go through the process and make the change. So we have to focus on utilizing tools like that. And also we have to also focus, and Jackie made mention of this, those risk assessments that we have, right? And that can tell us the level at which someone is operating mentally, right? And mind you, there are some perpetrators and some criminals who know how to beat the test, because they've probably been in it for so long. If you're dealing with someone, if let's say you're a counselor and you're dealing with someone and that person has been in counseling for a long time, they know the language. Right. So all of a sudden you're talking to them and they're using the language, they're saying everything that they know. If they say those trigger words, they will be deemed in a better state to return to society. They're on the mend. So there are some who will do that, and there are some who would try to circumvent the system. But again, it will help in utilizing those tools for us to know at what level of risk that person is operating on. Is this person operating at a lower risk that they can go back into society and be functional, or they're going to go back into society and within a couple hours, police are after them again, right? So we have to be honest, and we have to, and the public has to also be, because we find that we get a lot of pushback from the communities and the public when we say these are the things that we need to focus on and these are the things that need to be done. Because again, you know, sometimes you see it as maybe a human right violation. We can't treat somebody like that. You know, we probably say, oh, but yeah, he's a criminal, but still he's a human being. But sometimes we have to, and for want of a better way of saying this, we have to take off that hat and see that person for who he, and I would say she, really and truly is, and deal with them in that manner.
Jackie?
I want to say, Colin, that I'm a firm believer in rehabilitation. You know, so when I talk about medical interventions, even chemical interventions, it's an option of absolute last resort. Rehabilitation is in fact one of the key principles of sentencing. There's retribution, there's deterrence, there's rehabilitation. And I think we have to approach these matters acknowledging that that we should try to rehabilitate. The reality, however, is that some people will not be able to respond effectively to some of the traditional rehabilitative interventions that are out there. And in fact, the literature is telling us that sex offender rehabilitation is quite difficult. It is complex, it is difficult. There are some programs out there. The John Howard Society, for example, has really funded a lot of programs for rapists, serial rapists. They've said that, you know, the studies indicate some levels of success. But there's also acknowledgement that there are some groups, some men, some people who are serial rapists who will not be rehabilitated. And I think for those, we have to start thinking outside of the box, perhaps looking at some of them, interventions that have not been traditionally looked at. Going back to the dangerous offender legislation, where perhaps they will not be able to see the light of day. They will not be released if they are categorized as a dangerous offender. Colin, we do have rapists who have gone into the prison, come out of the prison, raped, gone back into the prison, come back out, and raped. They are serial rapists. And we must find ways of dealing with that unique type of offender. I'm not suggesting that all violent offenders are like that, but there are some who we're going to have to find very unique ways of addressing their violent behavior.
Okay. Kerri, if I can come to you and just ask, as your closing comments as it were, if you are to implement one immediate national intervention program, what would that be? You're muted.
I said, I hope you'll permit me to say more than one. I would try to be brief with it, however. There has been calls over the years for a sex offenders registry, and I think it's high time that we implement such. Many people felt that we got the news too late that there is an accused on the loose, that, you know, the police are on the hunt for someone who have committed such a grave act. So I know there may be talks about human rights violations, you know, and we want to see person rehabilitated, and we offset perhaps the chances of rehabilitation if they are published in such manner. But we must remember that based on our Constitution, your right basically says if your right infringes on the right of another human being. And crimes of this nature does not just affect the individual, as one of the guests has rightfully said, but it affects the entire community. And when the entire community feels unsafe or their movement is restricted, you no longer feel safe to pass through that shortcut on your way home because of this person residing in your area, I think it's important that the community is aware, and a sex offenders registry can protect more people. And I think sometimes that's the greater good, to protect the many. And of course, we want rehabilitation, but you have infringed on the right of not just the individual, but the entire community, and the entire community needs to feel safe again. And I saw something today that someone posted. They called for an Amber Alert messaging system. Social media, yes, many people are on social media, but not everyone is. And again, persons felt that the notice came out too late from the authorities and it was posted on social media. And it would have been an easier reach or a faster reach, it would have been a wider reach if an Amber Alert was put out through the phones as opposed to just putting it out on social media. So as a national intervention, I would say these are two things that we can implement and should implement in the face of these adversities.
Okay, thanks for that. Andrea, what would be one structural change to better protect the vulnerable among us?
Thank you, Colin. While there is a lot of talked about changes in legislation or increased sentencing, I think the focus should be on changing mindset. And we may not be able to change the mindset of the recidivist or so, but my recommendation is to start with as early as the formative years up to tertiary level, to implement a program in our schools that is incorporated in the Education Act and in our school curriculum. These programs will teach children from the early stage until they become teenagers about who they are. Who am I? Whether you're male, whether you're female, they're certain about their identity. It builds their confidence. It teaches them to understand their self-worth and to value who they are, to make sound decisions, sound choices, to be able to stand up for themselves and be assertive, so when they are faced with these issues, they can defend themselves appropriately. It also should teach what is appropriate and acceptable behaviors in the home, because we know many parents are challenged and they do not play their role as they should, and what is inappropriate. So they know what to accept, they know what not to accept. By extension, I suggest that this program trickles down to the level of the PTAs and caregivers and members of the community. So they are taught how to identify, like we spoke earlier about the red flags. How do parents know what to look for? How do they know how to monitor children who are very much more au fait with the social media and the devices than they are? So these are the things that should be brought about as a result of this program at the level of the schools up to tertiary and in the community.
Okay. Debbie, if Grenada is serious about change, what should we commit to doing now in order for us to have that change? You alluded to within a 10-year time frame. I'm not going to go 20.
Excuse me. Oh, sorry. I think what we have to commit to right now, and we alluded to it in the beginning, and I think Andrea would have mentioned it also, is changing mindsets, right? And that is something that we can work on right now. I know sometimes when things happen, we would think that
it's the responsibility of this person, that person, you know, and as Jackie says, yes, the buck stops with the government, you know, with the state. However, we each, you know, it's like tourism, we all have a part to play, right? So whether it's in the community, whether it's individually, we can each start looking at what we can do to change that. Yes, going to the schools, you know, the programs, right? That's important. But I remember when I was growing up, and maybe all of us here, there were community groups, right? That you go to after school. You know, for some of us, it may have been, you know, like somebody in the village who was into being with kids and teaching kids. I remember like Auntie Tech, Miss Thelma Phillips, she was one of those people who ran, you know, programs in Springs and in the community. So you had somewhere to go, and maybe we need to bring back those things. Maybe we need to bring back village parenting. You know, it takes a village. Those are some of the things that we can do immediately, right? Yes, the other things are, you know, may take more time, may require legislation and all of that, but there are things that we can do, because a lot of the young people, and if we look at perpetrators and we look at their history, right, their background, we may find that they grew up in a home where there was no love, right, where they were never hugged or touched in a meaningful way. I'm not talking about inappropriately, but in an appropriate way.
Or even says may have been victims.
Exactly, right? So we need now to have structures or support systems, right, for young people like that, for the children who are growing up in homes where their needs are not being met. And, you know, we talked about, you know, Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, and we find that, you know, when we talk about violence and we talk about young people being on the blocks and they're doing things in gangs and all of that, we recognize that they are on the block because they're not getting what they want at home. Their needs are not being met at home. It's not a safe space for them. So the young girls, as Andrew was alluding to, had run away. Home is not a safe space. So we now have to provide safe spaces for our young people, right, so that we can cut it down from 20 to 10 years, right? Provide those safe spaces. And community groups, we do have some of them, but we need more of those. We need schools to be a safe space, because when we look at social media, we see that a lot of things that are happening in the schools, and you can't blame some of the teachers when they take a hands-off approach, because depending on what is going on, your life is in danger. But we need to have safe spaces where if a child is not getting that love and attention and they don't have that secure environment, they can find in the home, they can find it elsewhere. Because we know, and research has shown that when a child grows up in an insecure environment, the risks go up for deviant behaviors, for being victims, as well as perpetrators, you know, so we have to find, we can start there.
Okay.
Right?
Jackie, in terms of your closing comments, if you can speak to a constructive way forward that would prioritize victim safety and also offender accountability.
I would like, maybe I'm ambitious, you know, but I would like to see a multi-pronged approach. I support, I endorse the behavioral change, the attitudinal change, that we've got to get to the root of it, the cultural context that helps support this kind of violence. When we could be having songs like, remember that one, Kicking She Back Door, and we can have little children whining down to the ground, singing every single lyric of this song, including when the woman shouts out, murder, murder, in such a painful way, and we're so desensitized to that. So I understand and I acknowledge that, you know, the public awareness building, the education, that's important. The advocacy is important, sustained advocacy. I think you made the point that, you know, not just reactionary, but that we sustain it. But I think too, we need to work on the structural and institutional reform. So some of the things that, some of the reform that came out of the situation analysis that came out of the assessments that have been done. For example, a sex offense court. If we have so many sex offenses, right? Why have we not yet thought about a specialized response to these sex offenses that would allow these cases now to be fast-tracked, because you have a court that's dealing exclusively with it, that has the people who are well-trained and has the support systems for victims. So I do think that there's institutional reform. I do think that there's law and policy reform. I think that we've got to approach this at all the, because, and the reform has to think about, yes, both offender accountability and victim safety. And the reform has to accept that sometimes there's some competing interests, and that we've got to find balance. We've got to ensure that we do not violate the rights of accused people to the right to a fair trial. That is a constitutionally enshrined right, and one that I think needs to be vigorously protected and safeguarded. But we've also got to think very seriously about the rights of the public, the safety of the public, and try to see how we can, on all of these different levels, bring that kind of a balanced approach.
So this is Jackie, Sealey-Burke, Dr. Debbie, Neckles, Andrea, Noel, and Kerri and Marrast. Thank you all for your sharing in this discussion this evening. It was an absolute pleasure getting your insights. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us over the last 90 minutes. I think the overriding theme is that change begins with us. Advocacy begins with us. It must be sustained. The standards that we would want to uphold, the outcry, cannot be short-lived until there is meaningful change impacting positively on our society. Beyond the headlines, educating and elevating. Thank you for being a part of this evening's program, and I look forward to being with you again in the next 6 days, 22.5 hours. Take good care. Godspeed.